It's going to be completely new. Our spending habits are changed forever. The way we interact has changed forever. The way we work has changed forever. And so what does a new economy look like? What does a new housing market look like? I think it's just a bunch of guesses until we get through this medical issue we're in.
This is TYC 3 Yellow Chairs with Spanky Moskowitz.
I got an email from this guy one day, and it was a friend of a friend of a friend connecting me and saying, hey, could you help a brother out? And not only could I help a brother out, but I actually like the guy. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about his business and how it navigates these very murky waters through these very crazy times. Andy, welcome to TYC, the podcast. I am so glad to have you join me. By the way, I feel like I'm in a bunker right now. I don't know about you, but I'm in this shelter in place. I'm in my basement and it's lit up, but man, it's such a strange time we're going through. Give me a quick 30,000 foot view on how you guys are navigating. And let's real quick so that we bring everyone who's coming into the podcast up to speed, who you are, what you do, and then we'll go back to the how we met.
Sure, yeah. Can we go back even further? So I thought it was wine, whiskey, or water was the theme here. I got my whiskey ready. I don't know where you're at. What's in that?
I got water today. because we're not doing it in the traditional podcast sense, where I'm sitting across the desk from you in the office, in the studio with, we're rolling a little bit differently, but I do have some nice stress relief hand lotion.
Oh, that's nice.
Here, would you like a virtual squirt? Here, put your hand right under the screen. There you go.
Oh, God, it's creamy. Yeah, so I have a company called the District Phoenix here in Metro Phoenix, and we buy and sell single-family homes, small multifamily. We do renovations. We do buy and hold for rents. We wholesale properties out. So basically, any property we get our hands on, we have multiple exits. And kind of started off. We definitely started off with a strong emphasis on the historic parts of town, and really revitalizing the neighborhoods where a lot of guys come in and just they're more remodel guys and don't really care about the charm and the charm of these neighborhoods. We try to keep that and make sure that lasts forever. So that's kind of our niche.
Now, Andy, as we go through our conversation today, if you could do one thing, I know we're in Zoom and we're not doing the traditional thing. If you can scroll to the bottom left-hand corner of your Zoom where it says microphone, where you see the microphone, and make sure that it's switched over to your AirPods. And if you've got your AirPods as your source, just to make sure, because I'm picking you up, it sounds a little room noisy.
How about now?
Oh, wow. What a difference. Night and day.
Look at you. You're a pro.
I've been doing this a while. So it's all good. So how are you and the team at the district navigating what's going on today with COVID-19 and real estate? Like, that's got to be a really challenging time for you guys.
Yeah, for me as the visionary of the company, I'm spending a lot of time getting information in. Today happens to be April 1st, April Fool's Day. Unfortunately for landlords like myself, it's also the day that we're all holding our breaths to see what rents come in and what doesn't. So, for example, there's been a lot of things in place for tenants that don't have to make their rent payments, but nothing has been passed down to the landlords who still have to make their mortgage payments. So that's kind of an interesting dichotomy that's happening right now. The people in the office that I have, as far as buying and selling and transacting, we're trying to stay status quo as far as being in front of people as best we can on the phone. It's a little bit of a challenge being over Zoom or being in different locations. Very few of us are going in the office, if anybody at all, at this point. So that's creating some challenges with communication internally, but we're setting up more of these Zoom calls, shorter durations, so we can see each other, have conversation, what's going on. And the conversations we're having now with sellers is a lot different, whereas we're trying to educate them on the options they have. It's not just selling, right? They can go to their lenders. They can, there's some protections out there. There's some small business loans available. So we're trying to educate people so they don't feel like they have to panic and lose their properties. But if they do decide to sell, we're here for them. And we're seeing everybody from the Airbnb guys to the people who upgraded homes and kept their last one as a rental, and they're not getting rents now. So we're getting a lot more of those calls. to people losing their jobs. So it's kind of interesting to see what's happening. But we also have to kind of get a beat on the other side of who's buying, whether it be investors or traditional buyers. And it's a lot of like who's going which way. Everybody's got a kind of an opinion right now. And it's my belief that we got to get through this health crisis before we even start to look at what this economy is going to look like, because it's going to be completely new. Our spending habits are changed forever. The way we interact has changed forever. The way we work has changed forever. And so what does a new economy look like? What does a new housing market look like? I think it's just a bunch of guesses until we get through this medical issue we're in.
Andy, I couldn't agree with you more. I look at this as there's a couple of things going on right now. Number one, there's a ton of uncertainty. People don't know what this means for us 6 months from now, 6 weeks from now, 6 days from now. And so their spending habits, their shopping, a lot of people have changed dramatically overnight, their behaviors. Now, good, bad, or indifferent, it is what it is. But this has a trickle-down effect economically that I think a lot of people don't think about. So as a small business owner, for example, a lot of business owners rent their office space. Well, what does this mean if you're suddenly taking a big hit? I have several friends who've taken 70, 80, 90% hits on income, revenue that's coming into their businesses over the last few weeks. How do they navigate this? Now, a lot of landlords understand this, commercial real estate companies, and they've been making an effort to accommodate them. At the same time, you have to realize that those commercial real estate companies still have to pay for the buildings that they own, unless they own them free and clear, which in most cases is not the case. It creates a pretty tricky situation for everybody. So on the homeowner's side, I'm curious, how are people negotiating this with their real estate companies or their mortgage holders? Because I would have to think that these mortgage companies can only hold so many mortgages without payment for so long before they themselves feel the economic impact of this. So I would love to get your understanding of this and how this works.
Yeah, so it's all kind of moving very quickly, but I can tell you, anybody listening, anybody in your sphere, pick up the phone and call your lender and just ask them. I mean, I have a lot of mortgages, and I can tell you that there's probably very few that require me to fill out documentation that's not giving me an answer right away. Flagstar, for example, I called them. They gave me a 180-day, no questions asked, 180-day deferment. There's a couple servicing arms that gave me 60 days and said everything is due on day 60. So, those servicers still have to make the payments, right? So to your point, the servicers still have to make the payments until they get direction from the lenders on what they can do. So they're offering reprieve with no financial, ramifications, no negative credit hits, things like that, penalties, additional interest. They're not doing any of that, but they're requiring it to be paid June 1, essentially, where others are 60, 90, 180 days. So it's a pretty easy conversation right now for the consumer. And I would just say, listen, one of my mentors always tells me, go get money when you don't need it, because when you need it, you can't get it, right? And so even if you don't think you need it, even if you're employed right now, your business is doing good, whatever the situation is, just go get it. And if all the money's due June 1, just keep it in your savings account and pay it all June 1. But if things come up and you need that cash, it's really hard to get it when you have to have it. And so that's kind of been my take on it. Listen, I've been fortunate. A lot of my tenants pay via online apps, Venmo, and so I'm seeing a lot of traditional activity. So I ask for help, and I may not need it, but it's really hard to backtrack in June or July and be like, hey, I made it through March and April and May, but I need help now. And it's kind of like you missed the boat. So it's pretty easy for the average person to do that. And obviously for entrepreneurs who are listening in, with the Paycheck Protection Program and the SBA disaster loans, I mean, I would be full steam ahead, getting whatever help you can get from that angle as well.
Now, if you don't know what Andy's talking about, just this week, President Trump passed this $2 trillion economic relief package. It's not even a stimulus package. It's a relief package for business owners and American citizens. so that, because everyone, so you have to understand when I say everyone that has been impacted by this, I'm not just talking about you, Andy. I'm not just talking about me. I'm talking about every single individual that lives in the United States, that lives on this planet, has been impacted by what's going on. So this isn't something that is going to go away in overnight. It's not something that's going to just be gone. It's impacting everyone. Oh, and I'm in the middle of a podcast interview,
What's
bud.
up,
Thanks for
Owen?
dropping in.
What's up, dude?
Listen, this is what happens when you try to run your business from the house. That's all I'm going to say.
Hey, you got a hug, man. That's a win.
I did.
You know,
By the way, that's the one thing I'm missing the most from being out in the world. I'm a hugger. Andy, I didn't realize how many hugs I've missed in the last few weeks.
Yeah, but you get those beautiful kids at home and the family. I mean, that's one thing that I'm really enjoying, to be frank with you, is my kids I don't have 18 soccer practices. I don't have to get them up in school, rush out the door. Come on, guys, let's go. It's like we wake up, somebody walks the dog, somebody helps with breakfast. They're at the dining table doing their homework. Dad's at the office doing his homework, or office work, whatever. It's been fun to reconnect with the family time, and I think that goes into everything you were just saying, that we are going to be different humans when we come out of this. Our spending is going to be different. The way we enjoy our time is going to be different. I'm fortunate to be involved in Entrepreneurs Organization, which is something you should get into, Spanky. But we had a Zoom call with EO China and EO Shanghai, which is two different chapters of EO out there, and they're 6 weeks ahead of us. And its reality is, they're 6 weeks ahead. It's not a lot different than it was right now. People aren't outside. They're not spending. They're not re-engaging. Everybody's kind of shell shocked of what happened and not really sure what's going on. And so, although they've flattened the curve down internally inside their country, they have it under control. They're now stopping people from coming in the country, or testing them and putting them in hospitals, or if they're on the same plane, putting them in quarantine. People still don't feel confident just to go outside and get back at it. And I know it's only 6 weeks, but the reality of this is our life as we know it is going to be different, and it's going to be better in some ways, and it's going to be more challenging in some ways. But life is different. Life's going to be different. The economy is going to be different. And, I think it's important for us as humans to find the positives and innovation in our business, in our home lives. How do we streamline things? How do we cut bloat in our businesses or our homes? How do we conserve our cash more effectively? I mean, as Americans, we like to spend. We're consumers, and changing that habit and zoning in, I think is going to be, it's going to be critical.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Up until now, I think a lot of us have just, the mentality in America is make it rain, and we might turn to make it drizzle. And drizzling might be okay, but the reality is we do overspend. We have been living very fat for probably a long time, decades. Mm-hmm. And even though we've gone through cyclical ups and downs, we've just continued to grow. And I love the word that you use, bloat. And so this is going to be a large correction. And look at that, the doorbell rings too. It's like, you can't make this shit up.
It's great, yeah.
It just happens. Now I'm sure the dogs are going to start.
I'm glad your dog's barking, because I've been texting my kids, get the dog outside.
It is, you know what? You can't stop it. It's just going to happen. So, yeah. And I think people are used to it. By the way, I'm going to drop into this at the end of this podcast. I'm going to drop in the video of the most hysterical Zoom call. And I don't know if you've seen this video yet. It's making its way around the internet. You have, I'm sure.
I believe so. Yeah. Put your pants on.
The woman, that's right. The woman who was, no, she was in the middle of a conference call and went to the restroom and didn't even think about it.
The one I saw was, there was like 15 people on the screen, and Jim stands up with a full bush, no pants on, and he's just like stretching out. He's got his good, they're like, Jim, your camera's on, Jim. And he's got no clue. He's just like, he's not paying attention. He's not in the game. He doesn't give a shit what's going on at work. He is full bush, having a stretch. And I thought that was awesome. So right now I'm not wearing my pants out of honor of Jim. But
then stay seated the entire time.
I got a squeaky chair. You told me I can't get up. It's bothering me.
Yeah, don't move. Don't move. So, so I want to talk. Let's go back to how you and I met, because I love the. If you've ever played that game, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, which
Yeah.
is a play on 6 Degrees of Separation. You know someone who knows someone who knows someone, and that's really how the business world really gets connected. Someone knows someone who knows someone. So let's talk a little bit about how you and I connected, because I love that story.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think obviously we're trying to get, for us, we were trying to get off of the traditional kind of direct mail, and get into the digital world and generate more activity. And so, we went through several consultants and trying to figure out, how to figure out Facebook and branding and advertising. And I mean, we were pretty novice at it. And a buddy of mine's like, "Oh yeah, you got to call this guy named Spanky." I'm like, "Spanky? Who names their kid Spanky?" But I remember our first call, you were in New York. You took my call. I think you were sitting in New York. And we spent 30, 45 minutes on the call, which I thought was super rad. And you came down to the office, and I think we sat for like 3 hours before we even engaged in anything. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, and for me, I think part of it is you got to have a connection to the people you're talking to and working with. And you have to understand that if you don't get it, I don't want to work with you, because it's otherwise it's an uphill battle, but you got it immediately. And wait, since you're going to flip your Apple Pen, I'll do the same. Okay. All right.
I'm
I
probably
got
not
one.
as good as you at it. I can't.
I've got no skills in that area, but the, when you work, I always tell people businesses are not business to business. There's relationships involved. There's people. There's an actual conversation that happens that has nothing to do with the business. It has everything to do with that personal connection. And so immediately, because we were connected by a mutual friend, I'm like, okay, if this guy thinks he's cool enough for me to connect with, then I'm going to connect with him. And then we started and talk and had our first couple of conversations. I'd love to talk a little bit, go back and talk about what you were doing, where you were, and where you are now, because I love seeing the stuff you're putting out there today. And man, in the course of just a few months, you have dramatically changed the way you do things.
Yeah, for sure. So, it's a tough environment when, for us, when there's just not a lot of inventory and everything is good, right? And so when you have everybody's got $1 million in their 401k, everybody's got a job, there's no inventory. As we're trying to differentiate ourselves in the crowd, the problem was in my space. Also, at the same time, the real estate transaction has morphed into more of a, I don't want to say technology driven, but like you don't really need your real estate agent anymore for a lot of deals, we kind of equate it to like the taxi cabs and the Uber drivers, right? Like we never thought we'd get away from taxis, and next thing you know, we're driving around in the back of some guy's Cadillac CTS,
Right.
and so, it's the real estate business is changing. And so what's happening is you don't have to be a real estate agent to go buy and sell houses. You never did, but it's becoming more prevalent to sell your house off market. And with that comes the ability to buy without a real estate agent. And the easiest way to do that is to submit a letter in the mail to a homeowner and tell them your pitch, and they open it up and they call you if they like it. And unfortunately, with the low barrier of entry, no licensing, anybody can do it, the letters in the mailbox just got more and more and more full. So all of a sudden we're competing with 50, 60, 70 letters in the mail. How do we stand out? Yes, we have a reputation. Yes, we've been in business for a long time. Yes, we operate with integrity, and a lot of these guys don't. But it was hard to differentiate that. So we needed a different pitch on it, and I thought that going digitally, it's been a challenge for sure, trying to figure out how Facebook works and the metrics, and getting the blogs lined up, and getting our podcast set up, which we're actually going to be shooting. We're just waiting on a piece of glass, ironically, to get our podcast area done. So we'll start shooting that here in the next couple of weeks. But getting the micro content, getting the everything we need done. It's been kind of a challenge getting it all put together. And meanwhile, you're still trying to close deals. You're still trying to hire new agents. You're still trying to do things. So it's been really fun seeing opportunities come in now. We're now talking about how we're tweaking the ads, how we're tweaking the stuff that we're doing on Facebook to get better qualified opportunities. Now we're able actually to talk about how we can do some proactive marketing towards people that we want to get after, besides just branding or advertising. So we're actually starting to get up after 3 or 4 months of implementing this, getting up on top and being able to talk about creative ways of doing things versus just pushing content or just kind of accepting what's coming in. So it's almost like every month we're taking these new strides, and it's not a perfect system yet, but it definitely feels better. It feels better. It's nice to have multiple streams of income or opportunities come in at least. And we haven't even really started using it for how we sell properties. We're just trying to get more opportunities in. So as we get this dialed in, and then how we push properties, I'm excited about that too. So it's brought a lot of it's brought a lot of creativity, a lot of frustration, a lot of excitement and spend. But it's fun to see that it's actually starting to work, and we're driving new sources of leads.
When you first started down this path, I told you, look, you're going to be in this for a long haul, right? This is a marathon, not a sprint. But what happens is that when you start being the person that generates the content, that produces the content, over time you build this wealth of information of stuff. And I really apologize for Journey barking her head off, but obviously my kids,
it's your dog, not mine.
my kids are having a lot of fun with her right now, and I'm going to just let them be. Mm-hmm. So, when you start creating this stuff, the easiest way to do it, and I've said this so many times, is document everything. Just film everything, and then you edit it down, because when you're documenting versus creating or scripting something, it's way easier. When you script it, it actually disrupts your business, versus documenting. You're actually doing what your business does, and it's just being filmed from this fly on the wall perspective. And so it makes it a lot easier to generate content at a much larger pace. What you have to start doing, though, for anyone who's not doing this, who's starting to do it or wants to start doing it, is you have to not fall in love with perfection, because perfection will kill you, because it will never allow you to get the stuff out there. It's okay to put stuff out that is imperfect. A version 1 is better than a version none. And I think you had a little bit of that hang up at first, but you overcame it pretty quickly, because you just said, okay, I can flood the market with this stuff and no one else is doing this. And by the way, if I look at the Phoenix area and I'm looking at the content that's being put out in your space, there's only one voice that I see and hear on a daily basis, and that's yours.
Yeah.
And how long did it take you to dominate that?
Yeah, I mean, it probably took us 30 days to kind of get 30 or 45 days to kind of wrap our heads around the process. And I think for me, like, if you ask me to script something, like, I'm stumbling over it. It sounds not real. It sounds forced, and I don't like it. We've had to do a few where we're like, hey, we need this asset to go in our flow for advertising on Facebook, and we need you to say this. And it's like, all right, well, let's take 47 cuts. But when it's just like, we're having conversation and we're able to document stuff, that to me, it's also real, right? So I, like, not everything I put out there on social media is real estate related, or it's like going to change somebody's life. But a lot of the feedback I've been getting is that people like to see that when we screw up, or when something funny happens, or, it's just real, and we're having fun. We're not, none of it's bullshit. And I think the thing for us that we're trying to figure out next is like, well, we're pretty good about getting in the car and documenting, going out and getting stuff in the car, and maybe have some questions we'd ask and have some conversation, getting in the streets. But there's a lot of stuff that happens in our office that it's, when you have one guy who's a videographer and an editor, it's hard we have so much content, how to boil up to the top what we really want. And then also getting some time where it's not just one camera isolated on me in an office, but like when I'm interacting with our reps, or interacting with people outside of the office, or outside of going to a property and operating, or interacting with construction guys, there's a lot more content there that we haven't even tapped into. So it's just kind of interesting to see as you're trying to facilitate efficiencies in what you're doing, that there's so much more that can be done. It's pretty exciting.
And it seems almost endless when you're documenting, because it's just someone following you around. What was that movie that years ago, the Ed Show? No, what was it called? Where the guy literally, what was it?
The Truman Show or something?
The Truman Show. The Truman Show. I said the Ed Show. The Truman Show, where they followed the guy around with the camera, the family. But that is what documenting is. It's just capturing those moments in the business. And what you think doesn't have value to someone, right, has a ton of value to someone, because you are where they want to be as a business. They may not be in the real estate vertical. They may not be in my business, but the experience and the knowledge and the expertise you have in your field, they can go, oh, wait a second, I see how they navigated that. I can apply X to my business this way and do the same thing, right? So people learn pretty much by watching this stuff and absorbing the content, and then you build your following, you build your fan base, you also build customers from it. And so it's a really, it's a vicious cycle of growth, and it's a great thing. How do you think that with all that's going on right now, let's pretend we're 6 months down the road, this COVID-19 thing is way behind us and life is starting to normalize. How do you feel that, like, having this content and being a media production company that happens to be in the real estate space is going to impact your business when the economy bounces back to what'll be the new norm?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a believer in the fact that, like you said, it's about the long game, and, you know, constantly being out there. I mean, listen, you know, to have the ability to share with people, like, pull back the curtains for the average person, be like, call your lender and ask for time. Like, that may make a difference for somebody keeping their house or losing it. You know what I mean? And it's been so long that we've been able to, like, when 2008, when the market crashed, I was able to sit on people's couches like, listen, it's over. You know, stop draining your 401k, stop draining your credit cards, you know, stop liquidating everything you have to protect this asset. It's over, right? Like, this thing is gone. And a lot of that was how the banks had lent out money, you know, negative AM loans or interest only loans that recast shortly after, you know, a short period of time. And these guys couldn't afford it. These families couldn't afford it. And I was able to sit on the couch with them and give them information to buy them time. And I could get them 3, 6, 8, 9 months to save their money, to live in a house for free, and then get back on their feet and gracefully exit with a short sale and no bank coming after them, no deficiency judgments, no foreclosure on the record. There's some, you know, obviously credit issues, but for the most part, they came out in the best possible way they can. And that's, now here we are 10 years later or whatever it is, you know, 12 years later, we can actually sit down with people and give them options that may not include me making money, but it allows them to save themselves and keep their house. And that's an amazing place to be in. And so, you know, we're using the platform right now to share those things with investors on how they can, you know, if they're entrepreneurs or if they're investors with tenants, or even if they're just mom and pop, or if they're a tenant, you know what I mean? Like, I'm telling my tenants, hey, you know, there's now money for tenants, you know, that helps them offset their rents as well. And so those who can't make it, we're going to get those out to those guys to help them as well. Get into the unemployment line. If you make 50 grand or less, you know, you can actually get paid more to be unemployed, believe it or not. So, you know, it's one of those things where I think, for me, if I just keep pushing out relevant content that's helpful for people, and not look at me, buy from me, sell to me, but hey, here's real stuff that can help you, or here's some stuff to break your day up. Like, we posted a toilet paper thing today. Like, it's not going to help anybody. Maybe give them a laugh. I found some single ply toilet paper at one of our properties, like worth $80 at least. You know, like, we had a little fun with it. But so I think, you know, down the road, when we have this bank of content, you know, I was interviewing a guy that wanted to come work with us, mentioned our YouTube page. Like, I don't know, maybe we have 3 posts on YouTube. Like, we just got that rolling. Like, we're already getting feedback that somebody saw us there. We're barely in there. We're just getting kicked off on LinkedIn. So I don't know. I mean, I guess my hope is 6 months from now, all this chatter that we have and these conversations are just multiplied. And then, you know, having a presence in the space for, you know, a period of time, and still being here through the good and the bad, I'm hoping is going to be really good for our business.
And remember, and I think a lot of people struggle with this, and I know you don't, but I think this is so critical. One piece of content shared to one person, but the right person has way more value than 1,000 pieces of content shared to 100 million people, but nobody's engaged in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting for me too is, we had this conversation early on, but turning the camera around on me and taking it off the District Phoenix and putting it on Andy as the brand, like, you don't, it used, it takes away this, like, oh, the only way we can work with Andy is if he wants to buy our house. Like, that's not the case. Like we lend out money to investors. We're a private money lender. We sell to investors. We buy from investors or from the consumer. I have a part of a title company that I'm an owner on that like, there's so many different things that I'm involved in, real estate based, that now I can share and being able to get it out there. Now, even my friends and family, my network, that I don't really want to go and say, hey, this is what I do, and like, do you want to be part of it financially or otherwise? Now people know what I do, and they're telling their friends, and they're getting a better understanding of really everything that I do. And so that word of mouth conversations are coming back much quicker too, which is an interesting kind of play on that, or result of that.
For sure. Well, Andy, I'm glad we finally got to have this initial sit down, and I want to do this again and revisit this probably 6 months down the road, because I want to see how things are down the road. But when you're looking at this through the crystal ball of, we've been through rough economies before, but never anything like this, what is your best hope for economic recovery from what's going on today?
I mean, look, it's tough because I, in my mind, we're 18 to 24 months out before we can figure out that we've figured it out. I mean, you just can't imagine, you can't wrap your head around 3 million people filing for unemployment last week alone, right? Like, you have restaurants that are laying off 1,400 of their 1,700 people. Like, maybe that restaurant comes back, but 40% of the restaurants or 50% of the restaurants aren't. Like, your favorite restaurant may never open again. You probably will never open again.
Which is remarkable when you look at, when you think about that number is massive. So, if you think 100 restaurants, right, 60 of them survive.
Maybe. And well-known brands are going to disappear. Retail is going to be rewritten. And so listen, if you lay off 1,400 employees, and let's say you open up all your stores and you go hire 1,400 employees, you're going to take your core 700 that rocked, and then you're going to go replace those other 700 with the 700 best you can find, right? And those 700 are not employed anymore, and they're not going to find work because they need to go wait tables or wash dishes or whatever it is that they do in the kitchen, right? And so you start dominoing that out to every, like, listen, hospitality, hotels are operating at maybe 30%. Like, what does that do for all their staff? What does it do for their lenders? What does it do for the marketing agencies that specialize in hospitality and their people? Like, you just trickle this thing out. I mean, the tentacles of this, the long lasting reach of this, it's going to be, there's going to be some challenging times ahead. And I just can't believe that, in my mind, within 24 months that we're going to see, I don't think we're going to see this again that we have before this for a long period of time. And listen, these economic changes, they usually go in 8 to 10 year waves. We're on year 12, right? So, like, everybody was like, wow, it's going to happen in 2019. It's going to happen.
We hit the crest, and everybody's waiting for that wave to break.
And it just kept going.
Right, but nobody expected it to break this way.
No, there was no economic indicators that this was going to happen. That's what was throwing people off. Like, 2019, every smart person I know said 2019, it's going to happen. You know what? We just missed it. 2020, it's going to happen. Actually, you know what? 2021, it's going to happen. Because there was no economic, there was no numbers to say there was nothing happening to say that this was going to go bad. What happened was this virus got us, right? And so whatever it is, it should have been every 10 years, we went 12. And so we're going to have a recession. There's going to be a period of time until we recover. And guess what? Around 2030, it's going to happen again. And so it's just how this world happens. It's just, so, I think getting used to the new, getting better. For me, this is my second time experiencing a downturn. I got caught in '08, and now I'm trying to navigate 20. And so for some, this is their third, fourth, and fifth, and they're seasoned veterans at this point. But I think the fortunate piece is, for like a lot of my guys in real estate that are working under me, this is their first one, right? And so a lot of them are insulated with they're new in the business, they're sitting on a little bit of cash, or they have small mortgages, or they have roommates. And so I'm like, hey guys, like, this is great. This is a great time for you to learn what's going on. And this is your first one. You're going to see 3 or 4 or 5 of these. So just be prepared for 30 and the next one and the next one. So I don't know. I know I went a little bit of a ramble there, but we have to adjust. I mean, this is what life is in our economy. It ebbs and flows. And so I think it's going to be, look, live lean. Don't be out of your means. Have a strategy in place to navigate through this. And even then you're going to get caught. So it's going to hurt, but hopefully you got some pieces in place where you don't lose everything. You're not super overextended. And unfortunately, I think a lot of Americans, we were already seeing high rates of auto default before this happened, which is kind of an indicator. Like, if you can't pay your car to get you to work, like, what's next, right? So, as Americans, we typically live above our means, and I think all of us are guilty of that to some degree. But it's a learning lesson. I'm glad we're going through it now when I'm in my 40s, so that when it happens in my 60s, I'm way more savvy and I don't lose it then and wiping down tables at McDonald's when I'm 60. I don't want to do that. So trying to find the good in it.
I said this the other day, and I'll say it again. The bad news in all of this is that it's happening to all of us. The good news is that it's happening to all of us.
Exactly.
And so no one walks out of this unscathed, and no one has this badge of shame for whatever bad economic things happen. It's just, we deal with it together, and we'll all come out of it together. We're going to come out of it different. And I agree. It's, I think, different and healthier. When I say healthier, I'm not talking about the virus. I'm talking about mentally, physically, financially. I think this is going to be a great correction.
And those of us who come out of this thing and innovate and create and find better ways to be efficient, and like those families, those businesses, like whatever you're in, right? If you're running your household and you're running it in a more efficient manner because of what we learned today, or you're running a business and you're running a more efficient manner, you're getting more creative on how you're gonna, at your house, whatever, you're gonna get more creative on how you're gonna expand, whatever it may be, right? Like in your business, same way. Those of us who come out of this thing and hit it hard and find the niche and find the way to be better for it, we're going to separate again. And that's it's an opportunity to separate yourself from everybody else in your business. And I think that's a cool place to be.
And 100%, it's an opportunity. And I think that's the thing that people have to remember, especially if you're in a business, a small business, or any business, and you think, oh my God, how am I going to survive this? The ones who survive this have the greatest opportunity in front of them on the rebound of this. And I've been spending a lot of time over the last several weeks because of what's been going on. I've gone back to what I call my Bible, my business mastery book from Tony Robbins. And I'm going through this and going, okay, what am I missing in my constant and never ending innovation in my business, right? What can I do to innovate and improve and grow and solidify the foundation of my business, of my core businesses? So that way, when this thing ends, we're up on top. And that's where you need to be as a business owner. Put your mind there, not on what's behind us and not on what's happening in the moment. You got to be looking ahead. Forecasting is way better than looking in the rearview mirror, because the rearview mirror, you can't do a damn thing about.
Yep.
So, Andy, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so glad we finally got to do this. And man, I look forward to watching more content from you. Every time I wake up and I get on my phone, I'm like, oh, another piece of content from the district. Oh, there's Andy again. You're everywhere. And I love seeing that you're doing it and you're crushing it in that space because no one else is doing it. And good on you for getting on it, man.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. And part of my my Spanky driven plan is the podcast. So we're gonna have that up and running in like 2 weeks. So the next time we meet, I'm gonna sit on the other side. I'm gonna talk to you, and we're gonna learn all about your journey as well.
Fantastic. I look forward to it when we can actually do it face to face with a real drink in our hands and
Absolutely.
not via
I'll bring the whiskey.
screen. All right. You bring the whiskey. I'll bring the
I'll
glasses.
bring the whiskey. You come to my place.
Done.
Fine.
All right.
All right,
Thank you,
buddy.
my friend. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you too. Thanks, Maggie.